Welcome to 5 Good Minutes.
You're listening to today's inspirational message on the book of Esther
with Kurt Bjorklund.
So in Esther chapter 2, we see that Esther is made the queen. So King Xerxes, Greek name, Ahasuerus, Jewish name. It says his fury had subsided, and at this point he's been away, probably fighting battles. He comes back, and some of his people say, why don't you get yourself a new queen, somebody who pleases the king? Verse 4, then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. And this advice appealed to the king, and he followed it. And so what happens is he gathers these women, these young women, these virgin women from all over the country, and they come and they're in a harem for him. And this is not a beauty pageant. They are brought into the harem, and the way that it works in those cultures is that a concubine could come in and never be called into a night for the king. So there would be somebody who would control it, who would say, yeah, it's your night. You go into the king. So some would get called in, these young women, conscripted, forced into the harem, and then they would maybe never even have a night with the king. Some would become one who would go in and they would go and have their night with the king, and they would never be called again, and they would just be part of the harem on call. Some would be called back time and time again because the king enjoyed them, and he would say, bring that one back, or whatever the deal was. Maybe he doesn't even remember. Some would be taken as maybe a wife, where he would choose them and they would be the kind of woman who he would say, I want you to bear me children, give them a little more status. And then one would be the queen. And so this was a crazy thing that happened for Esther. And the fact that she becomes queen is really substantial. She would have been one of hundreds called into this harem. And so to be selected and chosen, and the takeaway, at least in part, if you've ever been part of a selection process, a job interview, something, you know how much things turn sometimes on seemingly trivial matters. And God uses the seemingly trivial. And what I mean is, it says in this text that Esther basically caught the approval of the person who ran the harem and then the approval of the king. This was God's sovereignty at work in seemingly trivial things and seemingly awful circumstances. Now, you could also say that Esther ended up selling herself for a night in the king's presence. Again, I understand this critique. But as I look at this, it seems to me that Esther was simply surviving in the midst of a crazy, hostile culture. And God took that situation and turned it and used it. And this, to me, is part of the lesson again, just God's sovereignty in the midst of our difficulty, in the midst of our hardship, of whatever it is that we're walking through. And so I don't know what you're walking through today. My guess is you're walking through something that is not necessarily easy for you to navigate, and yet at the same time, there is a sense in which God's hand is at work. And today you may just need to hear that word and say, I will trust that God's working even if I can't see his hand in the middle of this situation that I'm in today.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.